They say every city hides a secret beneath its stones, but Seville's secret still bleeds. Because behind these golden walls, behind the bells and blessings, there once stood a house of God that swallowed women whole. 200 entered. None were supposed to leave. This is the story of the Convent of the Chosen, where salvation was a sentence and faith became a weapon. In 1627, Seville was the crown jewel of Spain's empire, rich, devout, and mercilessly hierarchical. Its cathedrals glittered with gold from the New World, while its poor starved outside their gates. Among the elite, daughters were castrated for marriage, silenced by religion, and for those considered inconvenient, too curious, too rebellious. To Baron there was another fate, the Convent of the Chosen. It was not an ordinary convent. Founded by the powerful Order of Saint Elvira, it promised redemption for wayward women of noble blood, but redemption came with a condition: total obedience, sealed by silence. Records describe its doors as open to the devout, closed to the damned. But once you crossed them, the roles reversed. Every new arrival began the same way: a carriage at midnight, a priest, 2 guards, no farewells, no witnesses. The girls were escorted through the garden gate, roses, jasmine, and silence. Inside, their family names were erased. They were given new ones: Sister Lucia, Sister Maria, Sister Esperanza, Hope, Faith, Light. Names that mocked what they'd lost. One diary, found centuries later in the monastery archives, begins with 9 words. My father sent me to God for convenience. The first night was cold. La purification. They were bathed in holy water until their skin bled from scrubbing. A nun whispered, every bruise is a sin leaving your flesh. At dawn, the bells rang not for prayer, but for surrender. The chosen were forbidden from speaking unless spoken to. Their voices were considered temptations of the devil. For a full year, new initiates communicated only by gesture. The penalty for breaking silence: 3 days in isolation, kneeling before a crucifix, hands bound behind the back. Officially, it was penance. Unofficially, it was control. Ledgers found in Seville's ecclesiastical records list disciplinary expenses: 1 iron collar, forged; 2 feet of chain, repaired; candles for night correction. In the convent's ledgers, discipline had a budget line, but the most terrifying entries were the names, crossed out in red ink. Next to them, a single word: asterisk. Purificada. Asterisk. Purified. Those names never appeared again. Confession was the soul of the convent and its weapon. Each week, the women met their confessor behind an iron screen, but this was no sacred ritual. It was interrogation. One surviving note from a visiting bishop reads, Father Tomas practices confession in darkness to better hear the soul. But the women said the darkness wasn't for hearing, it was for hiding. Inside the booth, aslit openit, not for speech, but for touch. The priest's voice would whisper prayers while his hands demanded obedience. And the worst part, the victims confessed afterward, believing it was their sin. The confessor merely recorded ID proof of impurity, justification for punishment. Over time, the women learned that purity was impossible. Guilt was survival. In 1664, the Inquisition began investigating rumors of heresy in Seville's convents. When inspectors visited the Convent of the Chosen, they found nothing unusual, just silence, prayer, and perfect obedience. But something else caught their attention. The archi, behind the chapas's altar, a narrow corridor sealed with plaster. Behind it, 3 tiny chambers, no windows, no doors, each containing a single iron chain bolted to the wall. The report describes spaces of penitence, but a servant later testified under oath that the chambers weren't for penance, they were for correction. Women deemed disobedient were sealed inside for days, sometimes weeks. Bread and water passed through a hole in the wall. One name recurs in the servant's testimony: Sister Beat, her crime, asking why God needed silence. After Sister Beatrice disappeared, the convent's books were altered. Her belongings were listed as reassigned. Her bed noted as vacant. Her name, again, asterisk. Purificada. But one document escaped destruction: of financial ledger addressed to the bishop's treasury. It listed the convent's annual expenditures: candles, wheat, linens, and then a single entry that historians still struggled to explain. 67 internments. Unrecorded. Paid. Not 67 burials. When the convent was renovated in 1923, workers broke open a sealed wall behind the old chapel. They found bones, dozens of them all female, ages between 14 and 20, some still wearing rosary beads. The official statement called them historical burials, but the walls told a different story. In 1701, a letter reached the archbishop's desk, written in blood ink and hidden inside a prayer book. It began, "We are the chosen. We were chosen to disappear." The letter spoke of punishments, disappearances, and nights when screams echoed under the choir hymns. It ended with, "If our bones are found, let them not be blessed. Let them be remembered." The archbishop ordered the convent closed for reform. But reform never came. It simply changed its name to the Convent of the Roses. Tourists visit it today, drawn by its beauty. They buy scented candles at the gift shop. No one mentions the roses were planted where the unmarked graves were found. The Convent of the Chosen was not unique. It was one of hundreds across Europe where faith blurred into fanaticism, where women became collateral in the politics of purity. The church's records never used words like torture or murder. They used words like discipline, silence, and grace. That's how evil survives, not by roaring, but by whispering through respectability. Today, the convent stands as a museum of religious art. Visitors marvel at the frescoes, the marble, the gold leaf. They never see the blood that built it. But if you stand there at dusk, when the bells ring and the candles flicker, some say you can hear faint singing from beneath the floor. Voices in Latin, broken, echoing through time. The chosen still praying not for forgiveness, but to be remembered. They called it devotion. History calls it horror. If this story disturbed you, good. If it made you question faith without accountability, even better. Because forgetting enables repetition. But remembering keeps the doors locked forever. Thank you for watching. If you believe stories like this need to be told, consider subscribing for more journeys into the shadows of history. The Convent of the Chosen, where its salvation became silence.